Kia ora koutou. I am the Casual Kiwi, and this is my Condemned Counter Fairies deck profile for November 2018. It is incredibly fun to see this deck come together, and I've been thoroughly enjoying playing it at locals. So without further ado, let's jump right into the profile. So begin with the light fairy lineup. We have 3 Minerva Scholar of the Sky. This is a definite 3 of in the deck. It has a permanent 500 attack boost every time you activate a counter trap, which is incredibly helpful because you don't have a lot of high attack monsters in the deck. So this is very much your can be your big beat stick, and I very much base this build around Minerva. The other extra benefit that she gets is that when you have Sanctuary in the Sky on the field, you can recycle your counter traps. So this can create a loop with some of the ones that we're playing later on, like Negate Attack and Drastic Drop Off, which basically allow you to just keep making Minerva bigger and bigger and gets your opponent in a situation where they're completely out-resourced. And so this is a staple 3 of. I also run 2 Bountiful Artemis. This allows you to draw a card every time a counter trap resolves. Now in most builds you'll see this is run at 3. There's 2 reasons that I don't do that and run at 2. The first is because we can access it through the new card Condemned Witch, which we're going to be going on to, meaning you don't have to run the full 3. And the other reason I only run this at 2 is you really would prefer to be summoning Minerva over Bountiful Artemis, because while you do gain advantage off of Artemis, you are still sitting on a reasonably low attack monster, so that's why I only run it at 2. Similar reasons, I only run 2 copies of Guiding Ariadne. So this is the only pendulum of the deck, which allows you to not pay cost in terms of life points or discards for any of your counter traps. But the key reason you only run this at 2 is really that this can be a brick. Again, ideally you are summoning Minerva. You don't want to be stuck with too many Guiding Ariadnes, so that's why we're only running it at 2. And then I just run the 1 Zoradius, Herald of Heaven, which you can discard for Sanctuary in the Sky, especially helpful if you've already used your normal summon in the deck. So that's it for the light fairies. Now we move on to our additional support. So we've got the 3 Condemned Witch, which came out in Soul Fusion. This is a fantastic card in the deck, and really why I decided to run the Card of Demise variant. So this allows you to get 1 Forbidden Quick Play spell. So I play the 1 Forbidden Chalice in the deck. But also during your opponent's main phase, you can tribute this off in order to summon a level 4 fairy monster from your deck, other than Condemned Witch. So this can be really great for bringing out Minerva or bringing out Guiding Ariadne if you need just a wall. And it's also really helpful because in addition to this, I run the 1 Darkest Diabolus, Lord of the Lair. Now, a lot of people wouldn't be playing this card in Counter Fairies, but now that we have Condemned Witch, which is a dark monster which tributes itself, you can use this to bring out Diabolus, which requires that in order to special summon itself to the field. I very much prefer this to the Parshaths, mainly because these days having piercing and a big body is not quite enough, I feel, to make the difference you need. Darkest Diabolus provides that extra protection on itself, not being able to be tributed, not being able to be targeted, which is something that the counter fairies themselves lack, as well as having that 3000 attack. So I would thoroughly recommend playing Darkest Diabolus in this build of counter fairies. So that's it for the normal monster lineup. Now onto the spell cards. So of course we run the 1 Forbidden Chalice. You can run forbidden spells at more than this, because you do have the 3 Condemned Witch, but I find that again it's really only icing on the cake, and primarily you want to be going into your counter traps. You don't want to have too many of these quick play spells, but it is really useful, and I feel Forbidden Chalice is definitely the most meta relevant at the moment. So then we run 3 of the Sanctum of Parshath and 1 of the Sanctuary in the Sky. This just works so well with Minerva, and just provides so much added protection to your counter traps. It's amazing. The Sanctum doubles as Sanctuary on the Sky, and as well as providing attack boost to all of your counter varies, your set spells and traps cannot be targeted or destroyed, so it provides a lot of needed protection. It also has an additional effect that can sometimes come up late game, where you can put 3 counter fairies and or traps, counter traps, sorry, on top of your deck, and this can be super helpful for just when you really need to draw into a card that's ended up in your grave and you can't recur it back otherwise. It's really helpful. And just the normal Sanctuary in the Sky you can get off Seradius, and it also provides some protection if they do manage to attack one of your weaker counter fairies. Then this just prevents you from taking the damage, which is super important when you have potentially not got Guiding Ariadne up and do need to pay those costs. So I think that's the ideal lineup of Sanctuary cards for the deck. Then the rest of the spells are all draw power. So I've got 3 Pot of Duality and 3 Card of Demise. Definitely the most expensive card in the deck, but well worth it. I feel like the Ties build can be fantastic, but you do need to have that perfect hand to be able to really make the use of it, and you can go straight off Card of Demise into a Duality, and you're never going to be doing much more than normal summoning. Really, your counter traps are the focus, and this just helps you make sure that you're always ending your turn with a full back row. And then if that wasn't enough, I've also got the 2 Pot of Desires. You can go back and forth on the proper ratios for this card. I found that 2 works well, and again, if you can get your Card of Demise and your Duality and your Pot of Desires going, then they all just feed into each other, and it makes this deck so much more consistent. So that's it for the spell cards. Now onto the traps. So we've got the 3 Drastic Drop Off. So this is fantastic in counter fairies, much needed staple. It's just always live, and depending on what you're facing up on, you might want to use this right away on their draw phase, or you might want to wait until they search for something and take it right out of their hand. Is just really effective, always live. Similar kind of story with Negate Attack. When we get to the side, you'll see what I mean, that you can side out for the Mirror Forces if you want to, but the fact that this is a counter trap, it just provides your counter phrase with necessary protection, while at the same time you're still plussing off it. And if you can get a loop where you've got Negate Attack and Drastic Drop Off involved with Minerva, and they can't add to their hand and they can't attack you, then it's only a matter of time until Minerva can finish them off, and you just completely out-resource the game. So those are probably the 3 key ones, which I would definitely say run at 3. Then you've also got 3 Divine Punishment. Now, we're a very Sanctuary in the Sky focused build, so you definitely want to be running 3 Divine Punishment. This is almost like additional copies of Solemn Judgment, in that you can negate a monster, effect, spell, or trap, and if you negate, destroy it, as long as you have Sanctuary in the Sky in the field. Just an incredibly solid card, and you're unlikely to brick with the number of additional support cards that you run. Then I also run three Then I also run the Solemn Brigade. So we've got the 3 Solemn Strike, the Solemn Judgment, and the Solemn Warning. So these cards are just the bread and butter. It's so good to see them all together. These are just fantastic in the deck, and they provide a lot of value. They might change with the ban list, but if anything, we might see Solemn go to 2, and that would be fantastic, because it hasn't seen a lot of play in other decks, but it is a really good card. And finally, just to round out the 40, I've got 1 copy of Grand Horn of Heaven. I went back and forth on this card for a while because it can be really strong in that it ends the main phase for your opponent when you negate a summon of a monster or monsters. They do get a draw card, but if you've got Artemis or Minerva out, then you're also recurring something back, so you're not negging too much. Can really throw your opponent's game plan off track if they were reliant on their battle phase. So that's it for the main deck. On to the extra. We do run a small Utopia package, so 3 of them there. So this is very standard for counter fairies, important for breaking boards. Then in a similar style we have a Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon and an Evil Swarm Exciton Knight. It's back at 1 and a fantastic card for just getting rid of your opponent's entire board, and a very good going second option as well. So then in additional to those 5, we also run 1 Baguska, 1 Castell, 1 Gaga Cowboy, 1 Bajunti Tutsunecro, 1 Gaga Geo the Risen, and Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. So this is just a mix of level 4 options, and of course the Fortress Dragon for if you do come up against Cyber Dragons. It's useful to just have a level 4 suite. So then in addition to that, I do have some Waking the Dragon targets. So from most fun to most effective, we have Odin, Father of the Acer. It's a light fairy and 4k beater at that. So it'll get boosts off Sanctuary in the Sky, but otherwise this will be the least likely for you to bring out. And then we have Beelzeus and Beels. Again, just useful cards, easy to destroy, kind of fits with a condemned theme going on there. The 1 Naturia Exterior. So all these cards can be really useful, but again, it comes down to the circumstances, it comes down where you think they'll be most appropriate, and it's just nice to have the options. So that's it for the extra deck. Now I do want to go into the side deck because I found it very useful at locals, and I think that it's beneficial to see what other techs you can possibly add in. So I did run 3 Curse Seal of the Forbidden Spell. So I found this was just an excellent way to take out an opponent's spell that can be super important as well, so that's good to have that as an option. The 1 Waking the Dragon, as I was talking about before, and then I have 1 Macro Cosmos and 1 Dimensional Fissure. Now you might want to take out Darkest Diabolos if you're running these 2 because it can conflict, but these 2 are both fantastic for graveyard removal, for dealing with graveyard decks. So I think being able to impact upon these strategies is really handy, even though they're not counter traps. Now in a similar vein, we also have 2 Quaking Mirror Force and 2 Storming Mirror Force. These are basically just to replace Negate Attack and to deal with any problematic OTK decks. 1 more Grand Horn of Heaven in case you're finding that's particularly effective. 1 Raigeki, just for going second, or even just to break a board. Sometimes this can come up if they do manage to play through your back row. And then finally, one Bountiful Artemis, in case you really do feel like you want it at 3. That is how a lot of decks play it, with the Minerva as the key focus, supported by Sanctuary in the Sky, and the full trap lineup. So that is my condemned counter fairies. Thank you so much. Ngā mihi for now, and good night.